All right, Coffee with Gaz here with Ann Ruiz.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. I think you're the one person that can maybe convince me that I should buy a condo unit. Is that the
or not?
Or not?
It depends.
It depends. I mean, I feel like I obviously on my end in the insurance world, I'll be one chapter in your book as far as the horror stories, right? Mm-hmm. But I've seen the issues for the condo unit side and also for the sides from the board. And you do a majority of your practice is focused on helping condo unit owners, correct?
Yeah. So I started out working for a prominent firm here doing construction defect litigation for the associations, and then thought, who helps the quote unquote little guy? And it's not a lot of people because it creates conflicts, right? People don't want to represent the small unit owner because they'll be conflicted out of representing the building. But there's a ton of work and people need help of all varying sizes, penthouses, rental units. It's all similar and there's a lot of work.
I think, and even why I wanted to talk to you specifically is for me to get educated. Like, again, we run into so many clients on both sides, is there's a big misconception, right, of what your rights are as a unit owner. And, whether you have a strong board or a weak board, there's always it's almost like politics. You got the old board, the new board, right? And everybody fighting it out. I mean, what's from a really like a high level, right? Like, what are the basic rights for a condo unit owner to have?
So the basic stuff, and something that nobody ever does, but if we're talking about like the perfect world, and a basic thing that you should be doing is before you buy a unit, you should take a look at your declaration, right? So
AKA condo docs?
Your condo docs.
Okay, that's the way.
Right, which is a declaration, bylaws, articles of incorporation, then there are rules. So to try to explain it the most basic way, because it answers that question, is that imagine that there's a fully built building, right? The second, a building that's just an apartment building anywhere. To create a condo, it means to file this document called a declaration of condominium. You record it, you go through the state, all these things. And that document divides the building into little pockets of air, little boxes of air.
Your own space, per se.
Your own little space. So to know what your rules are, that's the first place, because that's the document. It's like a contract. That's the thing that created your building and your condo.
Your utopia.
And then, and then from there, sometimes things are missing. You can supplement with the law, which for condos is Chapter 718 of the Florida statutes. It's complicated. Some things are...
And I think that's the biggest. So the information's there. Actually, is that readily available for any unit owner? Like, does the board have to supply that information?
Yes. So your condo declaration, number one, it's recorded. So if you want to look it up yourself online at the official records of your county, you can find it. It's in your deed, because your deed will tell you bought unit X of this declaration. Your condo association has to keep them on hand. And then the statutes are online. I provide some things as well, and blogs, and there's a lot of information you can find, but
it just seems, and people's attention spans today are even worse, right? Like, nobody even reads finishes the tweet. It's like the highlight, right? So we're expecting, and obviously it's on there, but isn't that, when you're buying the unit, isn't that much of the responsibility on the realtor helping you buy the unit, or is that kind of just, are we giving them too much credit?
Not really. Yeah, the realtor actually represents the seller, right? So your realtor makes money by being an agent of the seller. They're going to get their 3% off the sale.
Close.
Exactly. So sure, should they help you? Should you get disclosures and things? Absolutely. But when you're looking at the nitty gritty, which parking space do I get? Like my balcony, what happened to the tile? The tile broke. Do I have to replace the tile? Those things are in your declaration of condominium. Most things that people care about day to day are in that document, and they're not in the statute. When can you rent? Let's say you try to bring in a new tenant. They don't like your new tenant. They said no. Like, that's not in the law. The state of Florida doesn't. Unfortunately, I wish it would. It would make my life a lot easier to be able to tell people, give people answers across the board. But that's not the way it is. So absolutely, as far as disclosures, your seller and 100% has to disclose anything that's going to materially affect the value of your property. That they know or should know of, right? Special assessments.
That are upcoming.
That's the
surprise
Yeah.
bill, right? And you might have qualified thinking your HOA fee was X on your loan. All of a sudden next year it's that special assessment for whatever.
Exactly.
Concrete restoration, new roof, all that stuff.
So the seller is supposed to tell you anything that was in the meeting minutes for a year.
And no one's going to do that.
No one's going to do it. But I mean, it happens.
Right.
So I've had those cases where somebody sells, the next person comes along, gets hit with a $60,000 special assessment, and turns out, the seller never went to meetings. Like, not a lot of people do that. Should you? Yeah.
Obviously.
But those things were being discussed. In that case, the seller had to find the money to pay the buyer 60 grand.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, in those situations too, when it comes up, obviously in your services, not everybody's in a position to help hire you, right? To help. Like, what's kind of that fine line? Because, knowing what the rights are, sometimes in my situation on the insurance side, I've been to plenty of meetings, obviously where I'm representing the board, right? Who are the elected officials to negotiate the insurance. But I've been in meetings where they've directed me, right, to only discuss to them. And then sitting next to other unit owners who are asking you questions. And then you kind of get put in this spot where, do they have a voice or not? I mean, it's kind of, that's a reason why I'm joking around about not buying a condo. I mean, I don't. And it'd be just because of the drama I've seen on my end. But like for the little, not the little people, but somebody has a smaller problem, right? That might not be 60,000, but in the 500, 1,000, $2,000 that they think they were unjust. Like what can they do besides calling you?
Yeah.
Right?
What I normally tell people is, request your records, kind of be a pain, right? Like with anything else in the world, you're a pain, you're on it until something gets fixed. So request your records. They didn't whatever it is, they're not letting you have your dog. Request your records. How many other dogs have you had? What kind of dogs? How many other people have requested, medical, like submitted letters, those types of things. Because getting your records is free. So that's an easy way.
Easy way of doing it. That's
an easy way for people to start. It puts the association on edge because now they have to spend time to figure, to gather their documents, give it to you. So that's something I would do. And I tell all my clients to start with.
But is that directly always... Is that through the management company or straight to the board itself?
So the management company is an agent of the board, right? So that means that the management company they just do whatever the board tells them to do. So I normally correspond with everybody. The management company, if I'm sending a super strong demand letter.
Copy all?
Oh, yeah. I find the people on the board, and not only their address on Sunbiz, right? Where you could, on sunbiz.org is where you can find who are the people on your board. Just type in your association. I find not only the address that they're listed there, but which unit do they own, right? Then I go find the unit on the property appraiser, but what's their mailing address, right? Because maybe they're an investor.
Right.
So I want my demand letter to get to them certified mail in Massachusetts, like wherever it is, that they know it's coming. And when you do those things, obviously they pay attention. So you can talk to management companies, but the person making the decision supposedly is
the board. What's your thoughts on? And I have my own on two. So you have the self-managed buildings and then third-party property management companies as well. My personal experience is the third-party management companies. I prefer working with them. It almost seems like they're a little bit of a checks and balances as far as the board goes. Almost like the self-managed. You technically report to the board, but you're employee. So what are your thoughts on that? I've always felt and had better experiences working with a third-party management companies.
Right. Well, I've seen one building that I lived in Coral Gables that was self-managed, and that building since 1974 had never had a special assessment. And it was in tip-top, like pristine shape. Everything was perfect. That's really the only building that I've seen that was perfectly, as far as I could tell, that was perfectly run. The issue with associations is that the people who are on boards are just everyday people, right? Maybe the luck of the draw, your president is somebody who manages in their regular day job $15 million budgets or 20 or whatever. Wonderful. But for the most part, these are everyday people, most of whom may not have any business experience. So associations really need people to guide them. Good attorneys, right? There are very, very good law firms that represent associations. I sometimes represent associations. Even when we're against each other, the buildings that are run, that have good attorneys, you just get things resolved.
Correct.
The same with with buildings that have good management companies. That's not to say that every manager is great, but maybe their, regional manager knows what they're doing.
There's a level up you can kind of get to if you have other issues.
Exactly.
So you've been, I know it's been a crazy summer, and obviously we had this situation with the Champagne Towers, and you've been out there a lot advocating specifically about condo unit, well, what you do for a living, but because of what happened, I mean, anything you see going on as far as legislation change that's going to help. I don't want to use the word enforce because I still don't know who the condo police are, right? Like boards, we use different statutes, legislations, there's bylaws, and then there's laws, but like who are the condo police? Like how's that going to get pushed down?
So the problem is that there's not really any condo police. There's a DBPR, Division of Condominiums, but it's bureaucratic, right? They assign investigators. They used to do arbitrations, like many cases within the DBPR, and frankly, I don't see that. Like they're not helpful to me. I would rather go straight to court
and just cut them off
and get my relief there. But I do see some changes in statutes. Some of the important things, number one, are Miami-Dade and Broward are the only counties in the entire state of Florida. I think there's 67 counties total that have a 40-year recertification. There are no recertification requirements in any other county.
Not even 50 years, 60?
Nothing.
There's no...
So Miami-Dade and Broward is 40, and then every 10 years thereafter. One of the engineers who wrote that, John Pistorino, is close. I hire him often. That was written in Miami-Dade and Broward because there was a condo collapse in Cocoa Beach in, I think, 1980 or 81, but it was under construction. None of the other counties did that. So I think it would be helpful seeing what's happened. And I've heard some people throw around that upcoming. Maybe less, right? So it would be like geographic. Maybe not every county and every building in the state.
Got to start somewhere too.
Right. Maybe 20 miles from the ocean or 5 miles from the ocean or whatever it is, because they are assuming that saltwater, corrosion had something to do with it. Other changes that I see happening are enforcement of some of the insurance statutes. So associations are required to properly insure their buildings.
It's every 3 years you have to get a replacement cost appraisal.
Exactly. But it doesn't say what appraisal means, right? So can an appraisal be you looked it over on Google Maps and you called it a day, right? And you prepared.
How about this one? Or did you actually use the appraisal?
Right.
So you can order it. Doesn't mean you have to actually send it to the insurance company where you have to increase values per X, right? You want to keep it status quo.
Exactly. And so a lot of the buildings, that's one of the main issues with Champlain Towers, which we never expected that to happen.
Right,
and
crazy.
Unfortunately now it's happened. But I think total they have 40 million, and that's nowhere near. That's not even replacement value. That's nowhere near coverage for structure, liability, for anything. And that happens often. Right? That happens often. Or deductibles are through the roof. And me as a unit owner, I'll sue the association. The association says, I'm not going to get insurance because my deductible is X dollars.
And the problem, was it 2006 or 2007 when we had these, I don't know what the statute was, where everyone was required to buy their own individual H06 policy, which was, the intention was great, right? Because I think if everybody was insured, a lot of these water damage issues, which is what happens, right? Water damage, liability issues.
Right.
In a perfect world, you'd be able to pay your claim, subrogate, and everyone kind of would stop using the association GL policies like this, their own H06, right? Which affects everyone's unit. I mean, I just think like if everybody was insured, the world would be a better place.
So the problem,
peace.
That statute was around maybe 2 or 3 years. And the problem with it was enforceability.
Nobody was doing it.
Because the association, I think the statute said, if you didn't get an H06 policy, the unit owner didn't get their H06, the association could buy it for them. But in reality, it didn't match up with the market for insurance. So cool that it says that, but somebody would come to you and maybe you're not able to sell them
Where's the insurable interest, right? And the unit, how enforceable is it?
Exactly.
And how much work does that put on the board itself when they're busy enough doing other stuff?
Absolutely. So, I mean, every unit owner that I encounter a lot of people who have major issues for not having H06 policies. I send them all to you and I tell them they better, once I resolve their issues or during the issue, they better buy it. The main purpose for H06 policies, and this is what people don't understand, People don't get what it means to live in a building. It's not necessarily to cover your unit for water damage. Your kitchen cabinets are bad, replace them from IKEA. That's the least of your concerns.
You can figure it out.
The major concern, and I've had many of these cases, it's where you screwed up something in your unit. You left your laundry faucet running, and you now flooded 19 floors.
You don't have enough coverage for that.
Correct. Now you have 19 floors times however. Those other people are insured. Their H06 policies pay out to them. And all those H06 policies now come subrogate against my one person for that many units. I've resolved a ton of those. And it's a big deal.
For us, we see it. So we do, obviously we insure the associations themselves and then individual unit owners. So we had this conversation too about what should I buy? Obviously our job is to make sure, and you can buy as much insurance as possible. But if you're going to make a decision, I'd rather you go call that excluding hurricane, right? If you had to pick a choice, if you thought it was too expensive, at least cover for liability and water damage.
100%.
That's 99% of the claims
100%.
That we actually file every day.
Water's the biggest thing. It keeps going.
Goes everywhere.
It's gravity.
It goes everywhere.
And it's not only gravity, it follows pipes. So, you can have a leak somewhere and it ends up way over there because it dripped along some pipe through the building, and it's a big deal. It's a big deal.
The other thing I want to ask you, so are there any, and is there, or are there no sort of qualifications for board members? Like can anybody in any building I know it's a popularity contest at some point, right? You have the stuff going on behind the scenes, but are there and should there be any sort of qualifications, requirements, courses for people just to be on a board?
So that was added a few years ago too, and there's a requirement that I believe it's like one or the other. You have to sign off that you read all the condo documents, right? The declaration. You would imagine the declaration, the bylaws, the rules, at a minimum that person knows what the requirements
it too, right?
are.
How are you going to enforce it if you don't understand it?
Exactly. And then they can also take classes. But I think you can get out of the classes if you sign the document. But beyond that, there's no qualifications. It's like an issue both ways, right? Because then people don't want to be on the board, which then creates a problem where you have the same 3 people who are the only 3 who want to serve, and then they're on the board for 20 years and you can't get them off. Now there's a statute as far as like how long they can be on the board for, term limits, but that creates a problem in and of itself, trying to even get people to come.
Right. It's a headache. It's like getting involved into politics. Half the people don't like you the day you are a board member. Is there any like red flags or what would, if I wanted to buy a condo unit, is there anything like the 1-2 things that you'd recommend someone to look at besides obviously what you're buying for, the appraised value, right? Inspections. But like, is there like a quick like 1-2, this is considered a healthy association?
Yeah. So number 1, and I told this to some of my friends pre-Champlain, it turns out my friend considered buying in Champlain and had thought about my comments before. What stage is your building at? Right? Of like how many years out? So 1, it was just constructed. You're buying from the developer. You're probably going to be in some sort of lawsuit or something's going to be happening for up to 10 years from when you moved in. Because every new building, just like any work that you do in your house, there's always going to be something wrong. You got to follow up, punch list. Sometimes there's major issues. So are you 0 to 10? Think about that. Did that lawsuit already settle? Fine. Are those repairs already made? That's an issue. Beyond that, are you approaching the 40 year, right? Because if you're at 37 years and they haven't started the 40 year, you can buy at 37, you're going to get hit with a special assessment because they're going to have to do work at 40.
Right.
And so if you're nearing that, if you're after 40, you should be okay because you know that they already
did the repairs.
Not after 40, but made sure that they completed their 40-year recertification. But after 40, it's every 10 years. So 40, again, at 50, it's going to happen. 60, there's not too many of those buildings that are that old. We're getting there.
Right, it's creeping up.
It's creeping up as far as like when Miami was built. But those are the considerations and you're entitled to see those records. That's part of the thing too in the statute where they're trying to, I'm assuming they want to clarify, but you have to do some due diligence, right? Because the issue is you're buying, I think kind of just a big picture thing is a lot of people buy a condo and they think that's it, it's over. Like I'm golden.
The allure is you don't have to do any maintenance, right?
I'm never going to do anything.
People want to go to condo, I'm sick of cutting my grass.
Yeah.
Or fixing my pool, it's someone else's problem.
Correct. But even if it's somebody else's problem, it's something you're going to pay for.
Yeah.
So you need to know where you're at, and maybe you're not going to do the work, but you're going to pay in.
Right.
So
Right. It's interesting how on my commercial condos, the experience has been so different than residential.
yeah.
Looking at it more, I think it's a different mindset as far as like it's run like a business more than, everyone's their personal home becomes more emotional.
Correct.
So I will buy commercial unit, but not residential unit.
Yeah.
Per your advice.
Yeah, commercial units, warehouses are tricky though, because sometimes those are, all over. But there's office condos, there's warehouse condos. In any case, you just had to look into what you're buying and make sure it's a good deal for you in the long run too.
Well, thank you for doing this. I appreciate you, and also all the work you're doing out there. You've been kind of the voice, and I trust me, I follow you on social too. Like being out there, being an advocate for condo unit owners' rights. It's something that I think is so under. It's not a really big voice out there. I think it's an underserved type and thing that gets pushed to the side. It's not my problem. And being out there and being visible and with the work you're doing, all the changes coming on. So I'll be calling you a lot more, right? For the good clients, the good ones.
Thank you.
But thank you for doing this, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks.